So, hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the International Youth Conference. Today, we have an exciting panel discussion ahead of us today, and that's our first panel. We'll be coordinating today. I'll be the moderator. We'll be exploring the topic of innovation for a greener future, the power of inclusive education and sustainable practice in driving climate action. And we are having our three experts here to talk about this topic, and we'll be having a really insightful panel today. So stay tuned with us. And it is an honor for me being an executive director of this International Youth Conference. My name is Priyanka, and I'm having this opportunity to hear from our esteemed panelists who are experts in their respective fields. As the future leaders of our world, it is crucial that we engage in meaningful discussion. And at IOSC, we are providing this space to interact with the experts and to know their experience, and we can train our leaders that how we can mobilize the knowledge from our experts to IOIC, and how we can inspire other young people to take actions in the communities as our leaders are taking across the globe. So I hope that this discussion gonna be really inspiring for all of you, as we'll be discussing and asking the questions from the panelists here, and you can also feel free to write your questions in the chat box. It's open. We can also pin up some questions to our panelists. So I'm going to introduce our first of speaker here, Martin Olavarieta. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Martin Olavarrieta Maturana. He's a chief environmental officer in Miguel Hidalgo County, Mexico City, and he's also a senior year teacher of sustainable development class. And since 2017, he is the president of the youth organization, that is Mexican Youth Force. So, Martin, if you are able to hear me very well, then the floor is yours. Please take the floors, and we will love to hear more from you, from your expertise, and from your experience in terms of climate education and sustainability in terms of providing education, environmental education to your community right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka, and I want to say hello to Ashwira and Nishad, and to everybody who's listening to our Zoom or live. Obviously, I want to thank International Youth Conference for the opportunity. I'm from Mexico, right here. I'm in Mexico, enjoying the weather, and actually, I'm in my urban garden. As a neighbor of here in Mexico City, we have urban gardens, and in this opportunity that I got last year, I got to be elected as the chief of environmental education in this county of Mexico City, where 400,000 people live. And it's a very interesting county because it has a lot of disparities. You see a lot of riches. It is the richest county of probably of Mexico, the country, and also has the poorest side of Mexico too. Obviously, the environmental part is very lost, I think, in all of our societies. But Mexico has a lot of history in embedded with nature, and I think that's a thing we need to recover as Mexicans, but also as human beings. Like how to listen to nature, and I think that's the thing. Environmental education needs to focus more on sensibilizing and creating consciousness to everybody, to old people, to young people, to people with disabilities, indigenous people, women, the young, the kids. So in this year that I've been working, I realized that education, environmental education, it is the key to connect people with nature and help them socially and environmentally and spiritually. It's something that's going to connect. How? Well, I can tell you with only facts that kids love going plant their salaries or their tomatoes or their any I forgot the words of in English of the vegetables because I say them so many times in Spanish, but I don't know, like radish. They love planting radish. Women, elderly women love urban agriculture. So in environmental education, you can focus on many topics. What I believe is urban agriculture. How can we connect people that live in cities that they actually have never planted a tomato or a lettuce in their lives, probably never? How can we teach them that in their rooftops or in their gardens or in their schools or in their parks, they can have urban gardens like this one? So they can plant the seeds and harvest their food. So here we're talking about food security. Without them knowing, we're talking about food security, you know? So it is something that's going to help a lot of people without them knowing it. And we're going to help the planet. We're going to help people. And we're going to create an environment with more prosperity, with not only for humans, but for all living beings, I believe. And I think one of these keys, not the key, but one of the keys to help society is environmental education. That's my comment for right now, my friends. Thank you. Okay, I can talk more if you want. What do you think, Ashwira? I think our friend Priyanka.
I think you've chosen a great venue to deliver the talk, literally in the middle of the garden that you are. We love the location, your location.
Sorry?
I'm saying you've chosen a great venue for your talk today, in the middle of the nature. Does it get more sustainable than this?
It wasn't supposed to be like this, but it ended up like this.
Yeah, well.
Sorry guys, I was having some issues with my internet. Thank you so much, Martin, for your remarks. I may be having some questions to you to ask, and I think that is related with your expertise. So, my first question, and I think that will be really good if our audience will be hearing that answer from you, as you are expert in your field. So, I want to ask you that what are some practical steps that educational institutions, maybe in your country or community, can take to reduce their environmental impact and promote sustainable practice with the involvement of more on the youth in the ground and in the community, especially the marginalized ones? So how could you experience this in the field while practicing your expertise there?
So what I've seen in here is that it is very easy to apply this education. But first, I believe we need to create leaders that have the knowledge and the will to practice education, because we all have the will, right? Will is very good, but in environment, the will doesn't always help. Good will doesn't always help the environment. We need to have the knowledge, right? So what I've seen is that scientists tend to have this problem to not share a lot of the information. So what I'm trying to do is try to make them more into this social environment for scientists to also pass and share the information. So I've done this in this 1 year, managed to get this information, and now I'm sharing it with all the people, with kids, with leaders, with grandpas, with people with disabilities in their way, with little kids. We go to schools. So I'm seeing what you need. Basically, you need basic stuff like a plastic bag, a plastic bottle of water, 2 5 liters. Everything is not. We won't call it trash. It can't be called trash. Everything can be used as a container to start your urban garden. Seriously, everything. We say, "Oh, I don't have money." You seriously, everything you can use it to get some dirt and tell you the knowledge. So I can maybe, if you want, I've never done this, but maybe we can do a little session of urban gardening in English for everybody, and maybe I can give you some tips on how to start it. But it's very basic. You start with how to find a place, how to germinate, how to transplant the plant, how to harvest, what plants to have in your place where you are from to save your species. You know how to create pollinizing gardens, very important in your urban garden. How to create these oases for species that live in your country and in your city, because remember that we are destroying our cities by introducing many species that are not from our countries, okay, that grow and in our parks. Try to figure out how many trees in your parks are from your country, okay? Many of them, I can guarantee you, are not. Well, basically here in Mexico City, it is the case. So knowledge is very important. We need to have the knowledge and the will. So if you have that, everything is at your disposal. I think you basically can use any recycled material and use donations, organizations, NGOs, and friends that will help you start with this. And I can guarantee you, you will have a successful mission if you do it, Ashwira. I think it's very easy. You just need to have the patience with nature, because nature is very it's very, it's not like very fast. People want it fast and immediate. You know, nature takes time, and we need to take time with some things. You know, be patient, and those are the things that I want to give with the environmental education. That it's going to take time. Some things in your life, same as with nature, we cannot pressure it. No, I think.
Yeah, you're right, and I also agree on this statement that you just mentioned, that we can have future collaboration in terms of having, maybe a session on urban gardening, and you can train our ambassadors or maybe the participants, and that's really good to know that the young people are really taking interest in this kind of education and planting more trees. It's really good, and hopefully in the future that we can collaborate together to have more sessions from your side, and having your expertise in our sessions. I just have one more question here, and I can also see the comments here that people are really enjoying this sessions. They are also writing their countries from where they are watching. Most of the countries are here from Bahrain, Nigeria, Sierra Leone. So there are many countries, Zambia. I just have one more question, Martin, and I'm sure that you'll be answering it great as per your expertise. So my question is that what are some successful examples of inclusive education initiatives that you are having on your side or so far in your life by having the global experience, and how we can implement this by driving the impact climate actions, including the young people, and then eventually, the protecting the environment?
Very, very good question. And I think it's very important that you guys need to know your corner, your street corner. That's where it starts. If you don't know your street corner, you don't know the school that's next to you, if you don't know the park next to you, how are you going to save the world? So first you need to act local, no? Then what I think you need to act local and start figuring out how you can help people that live very close to you. Then what I've seen as an expert, as some things I've done here with not only me, with the Mexican Youth Force, we have created community with actions, sustainable actions. How I'm telling you, you need to know your street corner. It's like you need to know what's next to you, right? If you have a desert, if you have a jungle, if you have a forest, you have a river. Here in Mexico City, we have forest. So what we do, we go plant trees. Sustainable. We go, and in rainy seasons, we go plant them. In dry seasons, we protect them. We go like 3 times. We go the same place 3 times. So we go to this place near Mexico City. We need to know our corner. We need to know things that are close to our home to help them and see actions that are local, that have impact global, right? Schools. You can go to your school. Go to school. I've seen that urban agriculture in schools a must. It's fundamental if we want to have a change in our society. We know that kids are the future generations, right? So if they have this idea of taking care of the environment, this is just going to be a few generations when we have humanity and society that really don't believe that development needs to be also degradation of the environment. Development can be improvement of the environment, no? But we need to start putting these ideas in little kids, I believe. I've seen this in people with disabilities. It's a very, very good case where people with disabilities who have not eyesight, they have this very high sensorial they're sensitive. They're very sensitive. So when they go with the plants or the smell, I think it's a very good project. Also with the elderly, especially the women. Elderly women love planting vegetables and take them. In one of my urban gardens, we have planted more than 200 kilos of lettuce with elderly
Amazing.
women. So, and we go to school. So this is something that we can apply anywhere in our homes. Seriously, in our homes, in our parks, in our rooftops, in our schools, in our offices. The idea is that we have food security and that everybody can at least harvest some food from their very accessible food, free food, organic, healthy, nutritional value, and in front of your home, like you can just reach it. That is the idea that we start. There is a phrase here in Mexico. I want to tell you, this is a phrase of a very important Mexican who, in the early 1900s, there was a revolution here because of the earth of what the people who work in the agriculture, right? And he said, the earth is for who works it. Okay, so we need to work the earth, right? We need to work the earth if we want to earn it, because we cannot say it's ours if we don't work it. So that was the phrase. We need to work the earth to at least say that's ours, because we cannot say it's ours if we don't work it. So the earth needs to be worked. So we have these 10 years, right? You know, guys, right? The 10 years of a decade of action. We need to put this urgently in every school, in every corner. So that's why I urge you, my friends, to tell everybody to start doing this type of environmental education. Everything,
That's
climate change, agriculture, urban agriculture, water recycling, biodiversity is very important. That's the worst thing we have, the worst crisis, biodiversity. So I think it's very important for us as a generation, my friends here who are listening, that we leave in the next generations in 50, 60 years a better world. Wherever you guys are, in Africa and Asia, in America, in Europe, seriously, we have a huge load in our backs of responsibility. But I think we are the generation that is going to make it. I do believe in our generation.
Thank you so much, Martin, for this energy. We also do believe that we have a huge responsibility for our future, even not just the future, but for the today as well. And you mentioned that about the decade of action. Actually, we just have 7 more years for the 2030 agenda, right? So we have to hurry. We have to keep implementing the global goals, and we have to keep moving together by leaving no one behind. That's really good to hear from you, Martin, and we really appreciate your speaking time here with us in this amazing panel today. And we also hope that our participants are also gaining insights, and we'll be also sharing the panels later on our social media as well, the recordings, and they can also get to connect with you if they will be needing anything more from you. And we'll look forward for more training sessions from your side. Thank you so much for joining us, and I think we can move to our next speaker now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Take care. Good night, good evening, good morning.
Thank you. We are going to introduce now our next speaker. As you can see, there's some urgent meeting, so he had to leave. Now we will be coordinating with our two expert speakers here. I'm going to introduce Aishwarya here. She is the fashion and climate activist hailing from India. She's also the Global Goal Ambassador adopted by United Nations, and she is the Global Goal Ambassador at #TogetherBrand. So floor is yours, Aishwarya. Feel free to share your experience and your expertise, and then we can coordinate accordingly with the comments of our audience. And we'll also be discussing some of the questions, and we'll be listening from your experience. The floor is yours.
Great. Guys, you can hear me, right? Just
yes,
thumbs
we
up.
can.
Great. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. Nishad and I have shared a panel very recently in the past, and what we discussed is only sort of growing in terms of, these engagements that are happening and how youth can really push and drive climate action in terms of everything that's available to us. Um, One thing that Martin said really right, and that could be put in the words of someone really great who said that nature does not hurry and yet everything is accomplished. So I think, first of all, I would like to begin by saying that anybody who thinks that we can just turn back the time and be radical about it is such a wrong notion to start things with, because I feel like whenever activists are, you know, it's a general misconception that activists, they have to be radical. That is not really the point. And why I'm mentioning this is because in terms of the industry that I belong to and the things that we have done over the past many years, which is the fashion industry, there is a need right now to be sustainable. There is a need right now where conversations are flowing in from all parts of the world, telling us how we can be more sustainable, how you have to hold accountability for what you do, rightly so. However, one thing that we have to note, even to begin this with, is that Rome was not built in a day. So anything that's radical is never sustainable. Whatever's happened is a result of decades and decades long of wrongful practices, things that were not really mindful. And I guess at that point in time, it did not really matter because nobody really looked it through over what's going to happen. But now that we are there, when we have, how you said, Priyanka, 7 years and lesser, maybe to actually reverse the cycle and go back into it, there's just so much, that's up in the air right now. And I think these conversations and, experts from different parts of the world really help in understanding the approach better. Having said that, it's no news that fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world right now. And being an advocate for this industry and change within this industry, we've tried to make activism come alive with fashion, because things cannot no longer really work the way they work. And yeah, that's it. So I think this is going to be like the keynote starting excerpt that I could sort of put into this. And let's take forward the conversation in a manner of just understanding how youth could really drive the action. And I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you, Iswira. I think we'll can coordinate and go smoothly as our session move with some comments of our audience as well, with some comments of our participants. They are joining us on YouTube and Facebook and a few more channels. Let's move to Nishad, and then we'll be coordinating, and I'll be having some question and answer sessions with you guys, including with the questions from our participants. So here we are also having the third experts here with us. Nishad, a very good friend of mine. He's a Qatar-based climate advocate and environmental activist. He's the co-founder of Arab Youth Climate Movement Qatar. That is a movement which is working on creating climate awareness and policies in Qatar. Nishad works include mainstreaming climate issues, youth advocacy, so he's also a youth expert, and the grassroots works in Qatar. He's best known for his work on environment, climate change, education, advocacy, policy in the Gulf countries and Gulf regions, and his core of expertise include global environmental politics, sustainability, and climate policies. And he's one of the great delegate in the climate conferences that I'm sure that recently you guys heard about the COP27. So he was also an expert delegate there as well. So Nisha, the floor is yours. Feel free to introduce yourself more if I like something. So floor is yours, and just coordinate with our audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. It's great to hear from you, and I thank International Youth Council for having me and Aishwarya and Martin today at this panel on a very, very interesting topic on inclusivity, on education, and driving sustainable development. So, in terms of climate action, we as Arab Youth Climate Movement try to build something what we call very inclusive, grassroots-based initiative. The idea is many of my listeners here today might be aware that many of the countries in the global south really are not part of the global climate conversation. It is truly whitewashed with our global north. It is not a bad criticism, but it is a very constructive criticism. How our friends from the global north to make sure that we are included. It cannot be represented by one Greta or one Vanessa or one Nishad or one Aishwarya. It is a movement. So it has to be an inclusive and collective movement. It has to be representative of the regions, not individuals. So this is what we have been doing locally and regionally in terms of Arab Youth Climate Movement, right? Trying to provide voices for young people from the region, which have been really undermined for many, many years till date, even though we had COP, like Priyanka mentioned, in Egypt, and one coming up later in UAE, in Dubai. Still don't have us, it is of people from not from our region, given that this is our regional summit of global importance. But I think this idea of rotating the climate conferences in different country is to give emphasis to each regional requirements. But of course, our countries are really involved. But are our young people from our region involved? The answer is big no. So how can we really make the climate conversation more inclusive? And how to make sure that the aspiration of young people are part of the discussion. I mean, we just can't have some climate education provided by some what do you call the curriculum decided by somebody who doesn't know to dictate us, rather than we dictate what you want to see on our curriculums, our subjects to be dealt at schools, universities, for a future of jobs, etc. So Arab Youth Climate Movement is a very grassroots organization, work with young people at schools and universities in trying to build environmental consciousness within the countries. And we are very mindful of our countries and culture, not to replicate everything from the global north. For to give an example, we don't have Fridays for Future or March for Parliament because we don't have a parliament. So we try to look into our local context. I mean, we cannot always do things that our global north friends does. It may work or not, may not work, but try always to do something that fits your country, your law, your local policymakers, how you can involve them in a way that can be really make a change. So AYCM Qatar is trying to doing the same thing, working with the local decision makers, regional decision makers, to make sure that the relevant voices of young people from the region are heard, their aspirations are heard. How can we collectively bring the climate conversation to a point that everybody's points are put into place, not just we hear some of the only known advocates, advocating for change, because that's not how things work. I mean, even at the UN, it is differential based understanding. That's why the Secretary General called multilateral understanding, right? We still don't have at the youth movement a multilateral understanding of our climate advocacy or our youth movement. We are still working in silos. We are divided based on regions. We are divided based on continents too. So this is something we need to unite, and that's the work of every youth organization from across the world. And a big work goes to us from the global south to push forward to make sure our agendas are also a part of the top priorities in any of the conversation regionally and globally. So I'll stop here, Priyanka, and back to you.
Thank you, Nishad, for putting some of the opening remarks for your session here from your side. We completely agree. I think we together completely agree on this, that there is always the lack of representation of global south countries and youth from global south in the big summits or the big platforms. So we are also here at International Youth Conference. Our goal is the same, to mobilize the youth from global south. We are having more participation from the global south countries, and we always try our best to provide the best sessions and trainings to our participants, so they can learn that what is happening on the global scale and where they are lacking behind, so they can also raise their voice and move ahead to take some actions. Um, and you are right. I really liked your one of the line that you said, that the uh, multilateralism, right? So I would also add here the multi-dimensionalism. So we had to see every dimension and we had to see every corner of the specific situation, in terms of having the youth employment, youth involvement, or youth advocacy. So really liked your remarks here, and we'll be having more discussion as the time passes. Really appreciate your presence here as well. We are also having this comments that one person is asking that how a person from a developing country can beautify his community by taking some advocacy steps. So if you want to answer it, then it's just answer, and then we can move to Aishwarya for some questions.
Priyanka, what's that question again, please?
The question is that one person is asking, it's just not a question, but it's just maybe just a quick remark that you can provide. And the person is asking that how one person from the developing country can help in beautify his community by taking some advocacy actions from the beginning.
I mean, it always starts with the community. I mean, I'm a big fan of how we start things from the very grassroots. LICM started from the grassroots. It was two persons at a university wanted to start a club, which is now turned out to be an association now. It took, like our colleague Martin mentioned, anything in environment doesn't change overnight. If something changes overnight, it is not real. It is fake, for me at least. It takes time to grow in its own way. And we, from a university club, today we are in a full-fledged association, Think to Tank Association, working from a grassroots level. And we grow to a level that we're talking policy now. So it starts with you as an individual, and you work with your community. Nobody might take you seriously when that you as a person starting it. The day you grow up over the years, you know the challenges. The biggest thing you should be is that you are advocate of your community, that the people in your community believes in you, what you're trying to bring to your community. That's the biggest victory, not that your leader acknowledging you. So your community believes in you, and you bring that beliefs of the community to the table, and you become that representative of the community, and stay to the earth to the community, and they trust you. Bring their trust of your knowledge combined with whatever education you have to make you. Maybe you're from finance background, so you look at the finance aspect. Maybe your team are experts in other stuff. Maybe you are in expert in sustainability, so you bring the sustainability aspects onto the table. And you have the farmers and staff from the community. You have the agricultural engineer. You have a water expert. You have all these people's comments brought into the table as you become the sole representative there. So idea is to build that sort of movement. That's called the real grassroots movement. And it always starts with one person, and it only grows. So my advice is for everyone here is to, if you have a community already, work with them. You don't have to replicate many things if your society or community already have sort of an organization like that. If not, start one today, and it don't have to be fully fledged, fully funded one. It can be a very small self-funded thing until it really grabs attention of the community and people who puts in funds and support you. So my advice, it starts very humble, and then it automatically kicks off if your intentions are really to help your community.
I think yes, every action, every small action even matter from the scratch we can start. We'll be discussing more questions. So Aishwarya, as we all know that you are a fashion and climate activist, and you are the India's first fashion and climate activist. I'm sure that it's quite a new term for a country like India. That's also my home country, and it's very good to see your activism and your work. So I have a question here, that how can the fashion industry encourage more sustainable practice and reduce its environmental impact, and how the advocacy from the people like you, from the leaders like you, is really impacting those fashion industry to make the less negative impacts on the environment?
Thank you, Priyanka, for that question. I think the entire debate is definitely going around how to get this industry to act better, act more responsibly and sustainably. I feel that in line with these conversations, fashion industry, which right now accounts for 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and if you look at that percentage, it's huge. So the role of fashion in this entire climate dialogue just becomes so much more significant. And I feel that unless there is tangible action connected to everything that we talk about and efforts really put in that direction, we will not really be able to move forward and have this industry really become greener. But there are a lot of ways in which I feel now people and brands and organizations have started working on, and will be hopefully continually working in the future as well, is how brands in totality can reduce their carbon footprint. In terms of, if you look at fashion, it is such a highly intensive, resource oriented or industry in terms of manufacturing, production, then there's packaging, then there is transportation. There's just so much involved in this entire process. And having said that, brands, organizations, the makers of this industry are now being more responsible out of either pressure or the will to do better. However, I feel that the use of these fabrics, which are not really harmful for the planet, I think first and foremost, the material use, if the usage of materials, if that becomes completely alternative to what we use right now, can play a huge role in getting this industry to work better. Plant-based fibers, you talk about organic cotton, you talk about anything, which is not using harmful chemicals and harmful materials, is going to be such a great first step into reducing the overall impact of this industry. Water consumption in this industry is almost estimated around, I think, 92 billion cubic meters per year, which is again huge, and 4% of the total freshwater extraction of the world. And having said that, using materials which are not very water dependent is again a great step to limit your water consumption overall worldwide. There are just so many things involved into becoming more responsible, having lesser carbon footprint, having more blockchain technology, into working and updating their customers, consumers on what's happening, the trends. I think Priyanka is not live, but okay, guys, there is a bit of a lag. Having said that, I feel that we're still live, so we will wait for Priyanka and Nisha to join. But like I was saying, that this is such a resource-intensive industry, and steps to be more sustainable in terms of how we can do better, in terms of our water consumption, in terms of our material usage, in terms of what we are putting out in the world, in terms of treating the labor, which is right now so underpaid and undervalued. The labor laws, the entire supply chain, and the value of putting ethical norms into that supply chain, I think all of those factors really account for what it means for this fashion industry on a whole complete new level to revolutionize and work in the way that is not just green but healthy for the entire planet. And I think that is pretty much what covers how this industry can be obviously more sustainable. And now I think we should wait for Priyanka and Nishad to join, because we're in the middle of the conversation. But guys, I'm happy to take any comments in the comment section. I'm going to read it and go through if there is something that you want me to answer in terms of fashion, in terms of climate, in terms of what we can do together. And, so if there is something that is a question which I'm like just going through right now, I see a lot of participants from all parts of the world, and like how Nishad said, that there is so much underrepresentation of the global south in the dialogues that we should definitely be involved in, because our countries, most of our countries, especially mine, is ranked as the top countries that are vulnerable to climate change. And I feel that having said that and recognized that problem already, there should be way more representation from countries which are actually involved, who are actually the victims of this change right now. And I think Nishad is back. Hey guys, you left me alone here.
No. Good, Ashari. I mean, it's good. Our moderator is not here, so probably we might take up her lead. Likewise, actually, I mentioned fashion industry is quite huge and really undermined a lot of discussion around that. Good to that, see somebody like from India who is not it's a huge fashion country, but also the amount of products from the fashion industry has been produced in the country, ideally not very sustainable way, underpaid, and all those issues linked. So, how do you think, and being an activist from climate and fashion, can really resonate changes within a country huge like India, who's been leading in climate lately? So, how do you think so?
Thanks, Nishat, for taking up the conversation from here and being involved in fashion in this conversation, at least. I think, how I was just like sort of mentioning this, that the industry is so resource intensive that everything depends on resources here, and there's just so much involved in this. But I think, as a digital influencer activist and having that power to impact people's choices, I feel that influencers and public figures in general have so much power to impact decisions and people's choices in daily lives, because the loyal set of readers are always looking up to what you're choosing instead of what. So I think, my bit here and role here is to not really work, for example, in with the fast fashion labels, in generic fashion speaking language, is that once you make that decision that you're not going to be working with fast fashion labels, then it definitely limits your scope as a person, as an influencer, as a digital person as well, to work with that many brands, because there are many brands. There are like mostly the brands that we have in the fashion industry do not practice sustainability, and it is such a long way. But I think, having said that, being in a position of responsibility and power, the decision of not making huge profits is a personal one for me, because I do lose out on a lot of money by not working with these huge big labels that are fast fashion, and I'd rather choose to work with sustainable homegrown brands where clearly there is an intention of prioritizing people over the planet over the people from my end, and how that intention needs to sort of go out and impact other people's life as to how they can be more sustainable, at least not choose from somebody that is damaging the environment. So that.
And I mean, absolutely, absolutely. So many countries, especially in the developing world, are epicenters for fashion industry, because it's like Apple, right? Apple is designed in California, but productions come from China, India, etc. So big amount of this is taken care by the developing nations. Are they really given the due support to take care of it? Like, for example, fashion industry's biggest victim, as far as my knowledge, is Bangladesh. They have a huge chunk of Versace to Armani
Right.
to fast fashion products coming out from those countries. Are those places really can be made a better place? Fashion can be really redesigned into from fast fashion to more sustainable way of fashion. How recycling can be made more and more active, or more and more appealing to young people. At the moment, sharing clothes and recycling and getting from the same brands are not something that young people don't like it. But how you, like a young person, can bring up that curiosity with young people, like, hey, climate action and climate activism is not just asking the community to do it, but also yourself setting that example to the community, and how everywhere people from every walks of life can be involved with fashion as a way of changing our behavior towards environment friendly living.
Nishad, it's more like how I keep saying every day is that everybody in the world, no matter where they are, is definitely connected to fashion. Because even if for people which is who are not really, who don't consider themselves as fashion people, clothing is a subject that impacts all of our lives. It is one of the most basic needs in the hierarchy of things, is that everything also is a part, fashion has to be a part of your life even if you want it or not. And more than that intention, right now the way fashion impacts the entire climate crisis, it is definitely a thing to factor into our conversations when we talk about this crisis. Because you have to account for all the industries responsible for it. And after aviation, the most polluting one, the second most polluting industry is fashion right now. So there is no way that there is any more a chance or a space to leave fashion alone, or to like let this industry go and slide by. But how you said is that people don't really think that it's very cool to upcycle, to recycle, or to choose vintage clothing. And I think as influencers and as people who are followed that widely all around the globe, we are trying to change that intention every day by working with circular fashion labels, by working with thrift labels, by working with brands like Saratoria, Song. We're working with Gucci, Equilibrium. We're working with Tencel, we are working with MG Motors, and everybody from Pan Lifestyle Beauty, Automobile, who are contributing towards the green planet in terms of their A production, B products, and C the entire intention that needs to really say loud and clear that we have to save this generation and the coming generations from the climate crisis. And while sharing clothes, thrifting clothes, and upcycling does not really seem like a cool option, because there is just so much, a social class issue between people and a mindset. But I think exactly to that point that is the mindset that we are trying to change every day by working with the brands and letting it out in the open that this is what this brand does, and we completely support it as the taste makers, trendsetters of this industry.
So
Priyanka is
I'm
back.
back, guys.
Priyanka,
Yeah.
I give you the moderation back to you.
Oh,
Thank you
I
so
love how
much.
Nisha is
My
moderating
screen
it.
got
Priyanka, we
freeze.
missed you.
It just, sometimes in the virtual panels, it always, it's just internet. But it's a good thing that because of this technology, we are able to connect with each other, but sometimes we get the problems. So I was even listening in the background, and thank you for your remarks, Aishwarya and Nishad. That's really good to see activists.
I have trained Nisha to ask me fashion questions. That's just like on you may think it's Nisha, but it is me. I have trained him to ask me questions in a way that are very fashionable,
Yes.
but also like very, very in line with what's happening right now. Nisha, you gotta owe it to me back.
Thank you. That's a sweet and smart of you, Aishwarya. You're really a smart woman. That we already know actually about that. I can be having some question. But before than that, I have some question for Nishant. I'm just having a comment here from Alexis Way. She's saying that if it can't be reduced, reused, repaired, rebuilt, or refurbished, refinished, resold, many words with R, recycled or composite, then it should be restricted, designed, or removed from production. So I think that was just one of the positive comment for whatever you just said and presented your remarks. I'm having a question here to Nishad, and then I think we'll be wrapping up the session. So, Nishad, how can we ensure the voices and ideas of underrepresented groups that are included in the discussion about sustainable practice and climate action? I know that we already talk about having the actions on the ground, but as I told that we at IYC always focus on bringing the voices from ground, and how you can share about your experience or just the live experience that you already had on the field, and so our young people can get inspired by that. And also you can also let them know the biggest challenges that you faced when you started your activism by creating the youth-led sustainable initiatives, and how all these challenges can be addressed. So it will be really good to hear more from you on this.
Thank you, Priyanka, and thanks to all those people on the comments area. I mean, we are not ignoring any questions. We're being mindful of the time. We'll be trying to answer most of the questions. But thank you for being very active. And I know each one of you are change makers in your respective country or region or your community. Answering Priyanka's question, it's not that easy. I mean, we are from a region which has many issues locally, and to many of the countries, climate is not a priority from the leadership point of view. And that's where your difference comes in. You need to highlight the priorities of the community at every avenues you get, at every conference you get to attend, at every online panels you get to talk to, at every panels you are in attendance also, asking the panelists about your country's role. And some of the countries from the global south has least to do with climate change. Asking the leaders from the global north, making them accountable. Even reparations have been talked about. Loss and damage is now part of the COP27. Since then, we have it's an official dialogue of the further in the Paris Agreement discussion. So now we have a big voice now. I mean, of course, having loss and damage part of the conversation of Sharm el-Sheikh implementation agenda is not just a trending topic, but that's where people from the global south really can now voice. You can pinpoint and ask leaders what happened to loss and damage funds, where it is going, what is the directions. Now, this can be done in a very small way, like I mentioned, attending the local events in your own country, asking your leadership, local municipal governments, local governors to how it is happening, how is it implemented. So start very basic. I mean, yes, our voices have to be heard at the highest level, but it requires a lot of knowledge and understanding of your own country's priorities or your region's or continent's priorities. I mean, it is trendy to be an activist on a social media rather than not understanding what exactly is at stake. Now, if you ask a country like India to decarbonize, or some of the countries from the Gulf countries to stop oil and gas production because we need to fight climate change, it's not a feasible answer. I don't have a right answer to say like, hey, stop fossil fuel industries tomorrow. How can it can be done? I mean, the right word is like how we can do the just transition. Making sure that the transition does not jeopardize the development and aspirations of those countries. Because for me as an activist, a lot has to be done by the global north countries who had historical emissions for what the climate change we're facing now. And our impact would come soon. I'm not saying they have been doing good, but it will be soon showing up too. But what at the moment is to do is the rich countries really pay the reparation amount to those countries which has least to do with climate change. And that comes voicing yourself, making sure every avenues are used into. Work with your good friends of Global North advocates to share those stories with you, ask them to get you invited to events or programs virtually, in person, whatever possible way. So this starts with, like I mentioned, from a very small local event to online events like here, asking the leaders who attend or be the panelists to like highlight your country's needs and what your country have not did. For that, you need to be prepared well. And that's why always when you attend climate-based events, read about your country's aspiration. If look at your country's NDCs, what is NDC talks about, because many of the country's NDCs are well written by their country, with the keeping an aspiration that they want to do the emission cuts only based on whatever reparation given to their country. So it starts with you and your country or region. You can advocate for your region, your continent as such, because we are all coming from the same part of the world, facing the same difficulties. So I keep always telling people to be very humble and understanding the country's needs against whatever in the Paris Agreement cannot see. Nothing fits a single box. And each country has its own way of implementing Paris Agreement and taking climate action. And it does not have to be jeopardizing your or my future. And, the climate action doesn't mean taking back to us to Stone Age, but it's to bring up to a developed world where everybody can live sustainably. So the idea is to ask the right nations to provide the right directions for your country if your country has nothing to do with climate change and you have least to do with climate change. So it's easy, but it's a very difficult task. Those voices is not easy to come. Like Priyanka was asking, how did you start with? It took for me to 5 years to reach here. I mean, not everybody has the same story, but you guys have some easy, tricky way. Let me know. You can email me and let me know how to do that. But it's a long run. And what sort of things I'm highlighting for the Arab world today is 5 years of my knowledge and work. So it's not an easy way to get it done. So I request everybody to really start with very local understanding of the issues and what is at stake for your country. And at the time, same following up each COP outcome, and that to do with your country's leadership. Are they following? Are they not following? If your country is really impacted by climate change and nothing to do, and your leaders are pleading the global leaders to support you. So these are the things you need to follow up, and you really need to update your knowledge. The climate discussion at the UNFCCC is everyday happening. You can see each day documents have been updated on their website, like 2.1, 2.1.1, 1.2. So this is advocacy is a good part to build the community. But if you want to take the leadership of the country's voices to a global level, you really need to understand what's happening at your country, regional level. So it starts small. I always say, keep reading and understanding. of the requirement as per the IPCC and where is your country doing. As you might know, many of the countries has showcased a lot of plans, which I call the commitments. No countries is abiding to that. So making sure that follow up those countries who have to do worst with climate change and saying those countries, you have committed and promised this, and we have received nothing. So these are the work you need to do at a very local level, and then bring your voice to the global, like telling your country promised so and so to developing nations. Where is it? My country suffers from climate change since days, and our thing to do with climate change is least. Like for example, when we had this Pakistani flooding, Pakistan has the least to do with climate change, but they suffered the most. Who will pay for that? So the loss and damage fund has come up, but you don't know who's going to pay. It's a big, nobody's going to put a free check for anyone. So these are things, we as many young people from the developing nations or the global south can push for, that how your countries can need support, how your country's aspirations has to be taken care, because your country's future is you guys, If you are not, your country will not progress. And that's the young people. And your leaders know that. And the world leaders know that. They're just playing the dumb game, and you cannot stay dumb. We need to fight, and our voice will automatically be heard if you push today. And it starts today. And like I said, it don't have to be directly going to a cop, but to your friend who is going to a cop to make sure that he updates you with regarding things. Then tell your country, my fellow, what's happened there. Maybe one guy from your country representing your community goes there, supporting them through whatever funding is available locally or regionally or international organization. So it don't need to be like multiple people going at the same time. It is an effort of a collective idea, and one person can be representative at any of the events to really taking your voices to that global level. But of course, it doesn't happen over time, and the chances are very narrow for people from the global south. So our fight has to continue. Even our representation at COP is still the biggest difficulty, from the funding to the visas to everything. So our fight still goes on. I mean, like I said, our advocacy and awareness in our regions are quite phenomenal. I mean, I want to tell all of you and congratulate everybody who's here doing phenomenal work in your country, not just on social media, but really on the ground. Keep it up doing that, and make use of the most chances to attend events. And it is not the ultimate thing. It is just an experience to feel what happens at such events, at the big events. But bringing those knowledge back to community and sharing, this was my experience. I didn't know that it's so difficult space to be, but coming back, I learned a lot. So this sort of understanding of attending conference and showcasing your issues at a global level is something that everybody have to understand. And our fight to be represented at global stage is still a difficult one. So pushing our leaders, development agencies like UNDP, UNFCCC, UNESCO, UNICEF, USAID, all those developing agents can be supporting you, and you can ask for the support. There are many support available, but still accessibility is difficult for many of the global southing people. But I think our push should not stop and discouraged with some mere examples of you not getting this year or last year. Keep pushing it. It will come one day. Someday maybe it knocks your door because you've been doing incredible work and people recognize that. So my final words is that keep pushing. Things are not easy, and it will not be easy in the coming days too.
Thank you, Nishad. For me personally, that was really inspiring, and our audience are also writing that they are really enjoying the session, and it's quite informative. Um, and they are very excited to learn from you. They would love to connect with you over your social media handles, and Ishwarya to you as well, because the fashion activism is quite a new term for the developing countries as well. So it needs to be highlighted, and I believe that our session and our engagement will going to be high later, even after this session, because this live will be staying in our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel. We'll also post on our website as well. And Nishad, just to add just the 2 lines on your remarks, thank you for this. As I mentioned, even if we are talking about the loss and damage fund, or we are talking about prevention, but we are not actually talking about the root, So if there is a tap is already open, and tap is open and the water is just flowing, so everybody talking about to clean the water on the floor, that how we can clean the water on the floor. Everybody talking about mopping the water or some different perspectives, but only few are able to watch that, okay, tap is open and we had to close the tap actually. rather than just keep cleaning the water or just keep mopping the water on the floor. So it's just something I myself as a climate activist focused, and we are having many climate activists in our international youth conference groups. Our many of our ambassadors are working tirelessly to raise voices for the climate activism and environment. And that's why this session was quite important for us all because that will lead the inspiration that will bring the changes in the young leaders of our conference, not just the conference, but to our global audience and eventually to all the young leaders. And at last, I just want to say thanks to our speakers, to Martin as well. He had to leave unfortunately early because of a meeting. And it was really a great pleasure for myself and IYC team to host you as two of our expert panelist, and special thanks to Martin as well. I will send the regards later to him over the email. So thank you, Aishwarya, for joining us today. We'll be looking forward to have more collaboration in the future, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Thank you so much. Have a great time.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Nee. Thank you, Priyanka. We'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for this.